Hey all you literary legends and luminaries, I'm Julie and welcome to another episode of Booksmart. Today's book is so applicable to our holiday season as we buy and buy and buy. It's Secondhand, Travels in the New Global Garage Sale by Adam Minter. I like stuff and I used to love to shop, yet I am in the process of Swedish death cleaning, so I think every time I buy something I have this love-hate relationship with shopping now because I've become aware of all the stuff, really it's junk, that just ends up in landfills. Assuming people actually buy it, how long do people actually keep it? From my very first Booksmart episode, which was on John Green's The Anthropocene Reviewed, I learned about the clothing dump in Chile that you can see from space and how much of the stuff you throw in the recycle bin never truly gets recycled, as well as all those plastic bags you bring back to the store. Stores just ship those overseas where they will end up in some other country's landfills. Ignorance is bliss. So Secondhand was the perfect book for me, and I also found it at the perfect time of year, during the holiday season. And if the universe wasn't sending me enough signals, Netflix released Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, which I watched while I was reading Secondhand, and the information and even the people overlapped in both the book and the documentary, even though Secondhand was published 5 years ago. For someone who likes stuff, both the book and the documentary almost had me in tears. Minter has attacked this overconsumption problem by following the path of secondhand items, whether it be Goodwill, other outlets like Empty the Nest, who specialize in cleaning out homes when the owners or families don't want to or can't, that are right here in the United States, and then follows the items overseas, be it Africa or India, and shows how items are reused or inevitably dumped. And Minter literally follows the path to Mexico or Ghana and anywhere in between and interviews the people who work with secondhand merchandise for a living. Minter paints descriptions of the places and the people he meets, as well as the vast amount of stuff that people get rid of or are trying to get rid of. Let me read to you a brief history of our development of junk, which Minter has condensed and written out so well. He says, prior to World War II, little that Christie just said would have made sense. The United States, like the rest of the world, was still an agrarian society. Families were large and localized, and property of any kind was scarce, oftentimes homemade and valuable. 19th and early 20th century practical housekeeping manuals, a genre that's largely disappeared, were, in many respects, repair manuals. Some included basic cement recipes to aid in the repair of broken dishes. Others offered advice on basic strategies to prolong the usable lifespan of pottery, ironware, and glass. What little a parent or grandparent owned and left behind was bequeathed to the next generation for uninterrupted use. As the Industrial Revolution drew families into cities and mass production jobs, society's relationship to stuff began to change and modern notions of waste emerged. For example, in traditional farmland communities, food scraps are fertilizer. But the 19th century urban tenements into which rural families relocated provide little space or opportunity to recycle food. In the absence of waste collection, food scraps often literally went out of the window into the streets. In 1842, the New York Daily News estimated that 10,000 pigs were roaming the streets of New York, consuming mostly organic garbage. Modern trash collection and disposal had yet to be invented. Likewise, before mass production rendered clothing cheap and large wardrobes a middle-class entitlement, garments were homemade and expensive. A shirt could require days of labor. Bed linens and blankets were heirlooms. When they wore out or tore, they were mended, reused in other garments, or ultimately reduced to rags for cleaning. Industrialization and urbanization changed everything. Busy days spent in a sweatshop provided little time to mend a shirt, repurpose it into a new garment, or reduce it to rags. As a result, store-bought alternatives emerged, and families used the money earned from hourly or daily wages to buy them. They were still expensive. It would be decades before middle-class Americans could afford multiple changes of store-bought clothes. But the idea that a garment or other object was a resource that should be renewed at home was eroding. In the process, the sentimental value associated with clothing declined as quickly as the material value. After all, it's easier to discard a store-bought shirt than one made at home by a mother, a wife, or a sister. Of course, a pre-industrial agrarian lifestyle is more environmentally sustainable than a modern one, but so too is the brutish nomadic life that preceded the development of agriculture. Nobody is clamoring for either, and it bears repeating that neither is worth romanticizing. Sanitation and nutrition were poorer, and the average lifespan was considerably shorter and less interesting. No doubt there are downsides to an economy built on mass production and consumption. Factory production in particular can take a significant toll on air and water quality. But even in places where that toll is mostly tangible, such as contemporary China, consumers understandably embrace mass production and urbanization over the alternatives. That's worth celebrating. But spend a few hours at an average American home cleanout, and there will be moments when you doubt that you're celebrating the upward arrow of human progress. So this is an incredibly complex problem we have, and Minter has done an excellent job at managing such an overwhelming topic. It's such an intriguing read that I didn't mind the sometimes essay-like writing when Minter announces what he's going to write first and then what he is going to move on to. As the book progresses, it gets a little repetitive. Over and over again, we know that China is great at mass producing cheap items and that so many places overseas have figured out how to reuse and repair much better than the US. By about midway through the book, it wasn't as intriguing thanks to that repetitiveness, but then the last 3 chapters deal with the crisis of quality, as Minter names it. Those 3 chapters blew my mind. Normally at Booksmart, when I review a book, I discuss how the author told the story and whether I thought such narrative choices were the best ones for the book. But because I learned so much in this book that I feel I must share, I'm going to focus on all those fun facts, the stuff that will make you pause and reconsider your own shopping habits and whether you want to buy from businesses who deliberately contribute to either poor quality or the inability to repair the items you buy. So let me first talk about our stuff. It's our belief in our stuff that help contribute to this overconsumption, and perhaps we should consider more about the quality of said items. When we buy stuff, we assume it will go to someone else when we no longer want it, that someone else will either be able to use it or delight in it as much as we did. And so let me read you this little piece. And he is talking to a woman of Empty the Nest, and they are going through families' homes. And so she says, so my heart says don't throw it away. But reality is it costs money for Empty the Nest. We pay for the boxes, we pay for the time and the transportation to get it donated. And are the charities going to be throwing it away too? If she's going to run a profitable business that employs people and offers cleanouts and resale, the answer should be clear. But it's painful. Sharon isn't alone in the struggle. At Goodwill, at the Salvation Army, at church and synagogue flea markets, near the bitter end of every garage sale, some version of the question asked by Sharon's staff is muttered. The sought-after answer, take your unwanted used item to this innovative, sustainable solution at no cost to yourself and it will be reused indefinitely, almost never exists. Meanwhile, the growing flood of stuff means that the economics of creating, much less sustaining, that innovative, sustainable solution are becoming harder. Consumers in need of reassurance that their stuff is wanted and useful must at some point accept the idea that every object dies. Think about that. Every object dies. So let me introduce you to this little guy here. Okay. I bought this when I first started reading the book. I found it at Home Goods. He spoke to me, which sometimes happens when I'm out shopping. I had a Pomeranian named Ginger years ago. Even before I left the store, I told myself that since I was buying this little guy, I had to get rid of at least 2, if not more, Christmas cuties. I already had at home that I had bought hopefully years ago. That's my new rule that I started last year. A new sweater will cost me 2 items in my closet, that sort of thing. Because we're moving into a new building next school year, I'm getting rid of quite a few of my classroom decorations already. But I am getting rid of quite a few things, but I still have a lot of stuff. So let me show you this. So here's a rocking horse that I bought years and years and years ago. I had it, I don't even know if I can fit in the frame. I've had it for about 16 or 17 years, which is a long time to own something. And then I have this little guy here that I'm going to get rid of. And then these little vintage guys that I'm getting rid of. So there's nothing wrong with the reindeer. I regret that the reindeer aren't that old and I shouldn't have bought them since I didn't use them for that long as I should have. As delightful as all this stuff is, will they find new homes? Or will they end up in the landfill? I used to give all my stuff to Savers, but I have a sister-in-law who sells stuff online, so for the past couple of years, I just give my stuff to her. She said I have good stuff and doesn't tell me, though, how much she either throws out or how much doesn't sell. Part of the peace of mind I got from buying little Christmas ginger here was knowing that what I no longer wanted would find a nice home. But that's not what usually happens. So what is the answer? Don't buy anything in the first place? So Minter doesn't specifically deal with holiday decor, although I wish he would have, because that seems to be one of the areas that has grown over the years. Christmas was always the holiday for such frivolous stuff, but then the Thanksgiving and fall stuff started growing, and in the past 3 years, I am completely baffled at the mass amount of Halloween stuff. And trust me when I say that there is a lot left over come November 1st. And I am very, very guilty of going overboard at Christmas time, although I have cleared out at least 4 totes of stuff over the last few years. But I still have a lot of Christmas stuff. Where will it all go when I'm dead and gone? According to Minter's book, much of our stuff nobody else wants. Minter relays a valuable message from one of his sources. There's 4,000 or 5,000 hangers at the end of a day at a bin sale at a secondhand store, and they sell only about 300 of those 4,000 to 5,000. And I quote, "The world does not need any more hangers." I'm guessing the world doesn't need any more of a lot of things. Empty the Nest describes how the things we cherish, collect, or create aren't timeless. Collectibles don't always remain collectible. Their worth goes up and down, and such precious items to us have zero value to anyone else. Worse, even our families don't care to keep such things, not even for sentimental or nostalgic value. It's rather depressing. Minter spends most of the book on clothing and electronics. Clothing has gone downhill. Even Target brands have cheapened in quality, and people have accepted this. We have accepted that we will pay $30 for something that may only last 3 washings, and then we'll just go buy another one, throwing the barely worn item into a donate pile. The problem is such low quality clothing doesn't sell well at secondhand stores. If we can buy new, another low quality item, why would we buy something used? No one wants a big wooden piece of Victorian furniture when they can buy an overpriced particle board bookshelf from IKEA. On a side note, I don't understand the IKEA draw. I've been to IKEA 3 times and always walked out empty-handed. I don't get it. I've had small pieces of furniture from Hobby Lobby that have lasted for 20 years, but such pieces certainly aren't trending on social media, so everyone goes to IKEA. Thanks to Secondhand, I learned about companies who do nothing but turn used clothing and fabrics into rags. It was absolutely fascinating. I never thought I'd say that about cleaning rags. Yet that low quality stuff can't even be turned into rags. It's a complete waste, not only of our money, but what it does to the environment, both in its creation and disposal. Another problem with all this secondhand stuff, sometimes it's cheaper to dump it than to ship it overseas for use elsewhere. Minter also addresses our attitudes and stereotypes towards shipping overseas to developing countries. The world depends on those secondhand markets because according to one secondhand dealer Minton interviewed, they can't dump it in the sea. Yet there's a garbage dump in the ocean. Electronics are a trickier subject. Part of this is due to newer technology, stuff that we feel we must have. Electronics that were made with quality parts can be repaired or taken apart and used for those parts. Yet companies like Apple make sure you can't do that. They use unique screws or adhesives so products can't be taken apart. Even batteries can't be replaced. Minter says it is not good for businesses to make lasting products, and they figured this out way back with the invention of light bulbs. So this is nothing new. So here's a picture of me mopping the floor in a house we lived in 20 years ago. I don't know why my husband took the picture, but what is interesting is the Swiffer mop. We bought the mop shortly after we moved into this house. The picture was taken in 2006. The mop was bought probably a couple years earlier. You know how long that mop lasted? I finally had to buy a new one a couple years ago when the battery thingy just stopped working. That silly mop, which probably cost me about $15 all those years ago, lasted for about 15 years. The new Swiffer mop we bought, I have to change the batteries all the time and it's a lot more flaky. And I've only had it for less than 2 years. So let me show you this. It's kind of heavy. So give me a second. Okay, so this is a crock pot, but it's not the name brand crock pot. It's a crockery shelf crock pot. And my parents got this as a present for their wedding in 1971, hence the mustard color. When I got my own apartment in college, my mom bought herself a new crock pot and then handed me this crockery shelf one, which at the time was about 25 years old. After I got married, my mom wanted to ask me if I wanted a new crock pot. I said no, the old one was fine. We were never much of a crock pot family anyway, usually only using it for chili or stew in the wintertime. And here, 53 years later, yes, you heard that right, 53 years, I'm still using it. Yes, the cord is probably questionable. Look at how small it is, but there's no kinks or anything in the cord. I'm that kind of person that never leaves the house with something plugged in or running. I don't leave the house when the dryer is going or the dishwasher is running and always unplug my toaster. I always plug this into one of those safety outlets, and it still works. My mom died 14 years ago, and the silly crock pot makes me smile every time I use it, reminding me of my childhood every time I make chili. Why should I buy a new one if the old one works and it isn't a hazard? Which leads me to one of the best topics Minter discusses, children's car seats. Someone decided that car seats have a 6-year lifespan, that they actually expire after 6 years and are hazardous to children, that if parents use them beyond the 6 years, their children could die in a horrible accident. Minter's thorough research cannot find any verifiable information that suggests a car seat only lasts for 6 years. It's the belt in the seat that you have to worry about, and we don't switch out the seat belts in our cars after 6 years. If you turn in your expired car seat to companies, they destroy it so it cannot be reused. In fact, manufacturers suggest consumers destroy any car seat that they are throwing out so someone else can't use it. But why? Is it so companies can make more money by scaring new parents? So here's the bottom line. Companies are turning out cheaper products, and their ultimate goal is always to make money. We as consumers accept paying less over and over again to replace stuff that doesn't last long. We buy into the hype of a new iPhone, not caring that many of our technological devices will be rendered unusable when the battery dies, and we cannot replace it because the whole thing is glued together. However, Minter offers a glimpse of hope that some companies are focusing on quality, on the ability to repair, that the world is trying to reuse some of our thrown out stuff. There's just too much stuff in the world, though, to possibly ever get used. I would so suggest reading Secondhand and watch the Netflix documentary Buy Now. They are both worth your time and your energy. You will learn stuff you didn't know, and hopefully it will make you rethink your own spending habits and what you're contributing to our environmental state. That alone makes Secondhand worth reading. What made me the saddest is that so many people claim to be green and worried about the environment, but they're the first ones to buy the new phones, to follow the trends and consume, consume, consume. Maybe we all need to take inventory of our consumption and figure out a way to live with less while only being willing to pay for better quality items. And when we do buy something like this little guy here, we hope that it brings us joy for many years to come before it finds its way into a landfill. Maybe we can keep that in mind for the holiday season. Be aware of what we're buying and what the long-term value is and or use it will have. And if we can't place such a value on it, maybe leave it on the shelf, because maybe, just maybe, if stuff stops selling, companies will rethink what they make and how much they make and how they make it, leading to less junk overall. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.